Boom. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here today with my good friend Jack Bennett. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, he's on a red light therapy at the moment. That's why he's got the whole the whole red
No,
light thing going on.
I just have an umbrella that's red above me. It's very hot where I am, but I promise I'm not rich enough yet to afford red light therapy.
Soon though. You got some
Soon, give me a
exciting
couple
stuff.
of years. Yeah,
Cool. I mean, like, good place to start would just be like, who are you? What are you doing? Like, what are you doing now? And how did you get to this place? I think it'd be a good place to just dive in.
yeah. So let's take it back a year to maybe June of 2022 when I started a ghostwriting agency, basically writing for really wealthy people on Twitter to gain them status, followers, connections, etc. And that business kind of evolved from just Twitter to Twitter and LinkedIn to Twitter and LinkedIn and short form content on Instagram. I really just kind of grew that agency up. And about 4 or 5 months ago, so 6 months in, I was making pretty good money, but I felt like it was not what I wanted to do in the very long term. It was a great way to make money when you're 19, but I felt like it wasn't a great way to make money from the time I was 20 to the time I was 40. So that kind of made me reflect on what I wanted to do. And I decided that the real leverage opportunity was not in the dollars I was getting paid by these wealthy people. It was that if somebody can afford to pay you between $6,000 and $8,000 a month on retainer to write tweets for them or to post on LinkedIn, they probably had more money in cash that I could borrow from them to go and acquire other businesses. So that's kind of the venture that I'm in the middle of pivoting to right now. I've taken my agency volume down by about maybe 65% and basically made a couple investments as a minority stakeholder in a few businesses. And those have kind of worked out. So then I decided, okay, let's take this and let's go kind of balls to the wall sort of and just really take it to the next level by taking majority stakes and acquiring whole parts of businesses. So that's kind of the mini version of my journey, and I'm really looking forward to it. I feel really excited about business again, so that's great.
That's awesome, man. I mean, there's lots to go into that. I want to backtrack a bit into the whole ghostwriting scene. So, one thing you said that really stuck out with me is, yeah, it's good enough to charge 6 to 8K a month for a client, but they've got way more money to dispose. And I think your ability to just spot business opportunities, I think, is very impressive. And I'm kind of starting to see that with my own clients at the moment. It's like, okay, this is the in, this is the kind of foot in the door, if you will. It's like the key to unlock the rooms that you didn't think you could never unlock, right? It's a kind of that opportunity, and you've been able to, sounds like it, like leverage that to its like fullest potential. And I think you sounds like you're going to go try and go all the way with it. Like, tell me about how you first landed these clients then, because like a new ghostwriter, there's a lot of people on Twitter trying to get into the space. Like, how did you go about getting your first clients?
Sure. So my first clients were really, it was such a different scene when I first started compared to where it is now. It's a lot less commoditized. The quality of people were a lot better. And because of that, you could get better training and better knowledge because they were just the voices at the top were so much better because it was more almost like it was like an oligopoly of like two or three guys like Dakota Robertson, J.K. Molina and stuff. And those guys were just giving advice on it. And I know both them and they know what they're doing. So it was just easier to follow. But in terms of actually getting clients, I would say the way I got my first clients was by working for free, I guess. And then I used those to kind of leverage different opportunities because I felt like if there are going to be a lot of people in the space, they're very likely to shortcut it and kind of just try and go for the big paid clients, the big fish. I thought if I can even think on a 3 or 6 month time horizon, it's probably going to be a lot easier to close clients, right? By kind of getting your mistakes out early and working for free. So I just looked for businesses that were kind of stagnant or declining, and I just offered to work for them for free because they weren't accelerating at a high rate. It was a real low risk opportunity for them. And that kind of allowed me to just get simple yeses, right? And that's kind of what you want to do in the early stages. I view ghostwriting as sort of a pyramid where it's like 95% of people are in kind of like stage one, and that's kind of the dogfight, what I call it. And like your goal should be just to get out of the dogfight, because once you do that, it's really, really easy. Like, you know how it is, right? When you first start, like you're just competing with everybody. And now, I mean, we've talked a little bit, and it's really easy to move from stage two to stage three to stage four, right? So my real goal was just to get out of the dogfight as soon as possible and just take on two or three clients and get experience. And yeah, so it ended up working out with those two or three clients. To be fair, it was a lot easier to grow on Twitter back then than it is now. Once again, just because there were less creators on the platform in the niches that I was helping, and that's kind of where it went. And I just I remember one of my first clients was like some guy who was worth like $12 million because he built and sold some like SaaS company. I remember, and that was kind of like the first inkling I had when I thought that's kind of interesting. Like the type of people I'm working with, that those high leverage people, those high connection people, those high quality connection people. So I guess to answer your question, I looked for free to start and then kind of built my way up from there.
Dude, I completely resonate with what you say. Like when I started, it found it so difficult to find clients, like sending 100,000 DMs, like it's just so long, no replies, and then trying to do this like lead gen content, all of this kind of bull crap. And I was like, surely no one's going to pay this much for ghostwriting. All you're doing is just like posting on social media and growing an account. And then like the one opportunity that you get given and you realize, holy shit, like there's a lot of people who want this and see value in it and
Yeah.
are willing to pay good money for it. And so to me, it's like once you find these people, it's literally just like raining money. It's raining opportunity everywhere. And so that's the kind of experience that I'm starting to see like from your perspective now. And I think a lot of people don't even get past that. I'm curious to hear like what was your mindset around like starting this ghostwriting business when you were at the beginning? Because I think, like you said, it's a dogfight, right? It's a lot of people have this limiting belief and have like procrastinate. They don't even want to. They see this like Dakota ghostwriting making a ton of money. They see you making a ton of money. They see Taylor making a ton of money, and like, I really want to do this. And so they start pretending to be like ghostwriters on Twitter. And like how did you kind of just have this mindset just to like keep on going? And like how did you have the mindset to not know what to do, but just to like figure it out and like make something of yourself?
That's a great question. To be honest, the reason I went to ghostwriting was because I actually got pretty decent at trading stocks and like options on stocks. And I was able to do it because that was still during kind of COVID-ish time. And basically, my university was very, very late to ask kids to come back to school. So basically, I had so much time on my hands that I kind of started getting good at that. And then they said, okay, you have to come back to school in September. And I thought, well, it's going to be difficult to trade actively while in a live class. So I need to find another way to kind of make a similar income. And well, I wasn't an incredible trader. I was pretty good, but I wasn't insane. And basically, I I just happened to come across it. And I thought this is really simple, and this just makes sense. And it was just a very simple business model to kind of get me back to that point and back to where I kind of wanted to be in terms of like a pure mindset. I guess at that time it was just like a cash mindset. To be honest, there's no like I wasn't thinking,
Mhm.
oh well, these are the building blocks or anything like that. I just thought it's a decent way to make money, and I feel like something I'm way better at than other people is just identifying opportunities. You know, there's a great book and it talks about how opportunities fly everybody by every single week, every single month, whether you make $2,000 a month and you're in college, whether you make $6,000 a month and you work a 9 to 5, whether it's somebody like us who's more of like an entrepreneur, whether you make $1 million a year, right? And it says that the people who make $1 million a year and will continue to grow their wealth are those that can identify those opportunities. And I think that was really it for me. I just saw it as a great opportunity. I was able to identify it before the market generally, and that kind of made it a lot easier for me, right? Like I said, I was really, really fortunate to get a couple larger wins early on, and that kind of keeps you going. But what I would say is, even though this is a little bit off topic, I was talking with somebody about this a few months ago, and they said, if you're being really honest with yourself, if you send 100 DMs a day for 90 days, it'd be very difficult at the end of those 90 days to not have 3 or 4 clients paying you like 2,500 to 3,500 a month, right? The issue is people put that effort in, but they copy the effort they see on the platform. So for example, when somebody sees like a good like DM script, they use it, but then they don't realize that, okay, that tweet has, 70,000 views. So how many people do you think are going to be using that? And then you and I know, because we have, I think, combined maybe 20,000 followers on the platform, maybe a bit more. I know you've been killing it lately, but like we get the same DMs every day, the exact same text from different people. It's like, yeah, so you saw that obviously on some post or something that's not original to you. So I think what I realized was I need to find those gems of advice that have like 700 views. Because that means, okay, maybe I'm doing it and like one other guy, right? And that's kind of how you go about it. And what I would say, if I could give a piece of advice to anybody to make this kind of a bit more actionable, is no matter what you're selling, whether it's like fitness, we did this for a fitness client of ours one time, where it's like, instead of asking, can I do this for you? Give like your value prop and your guarantee or whatever and say, do you know anybody who might be interested in this? Right? Because then it doesn't become a like you're asking for something. It becomes like a almost like a more of a joint partnership. And then maybe they'll be like, oh, yeah, I don't know, but maybe this guy, right? And then you get that guy's network too, even if he says no, right? So what I would say kind of the new wave is that I'm not seeing a ton of people doing is going out and kind of asking for others. So don't try and close this guy, try and close his friends, basically. So I guess maybe that's a bit.
Dude, I love this topic because this is exactly how I've like pretty much all of my clients are referrals from one person. And so like it's crazy how when you can find the pools of people who are your ideal clients and knowing how to access that, that is when it rains. And I think
Right.
like a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think, oh, I have to send 100 DMs a day. I have to like create lead generation content. I have to like do this and that, have this perfect DM script. They don't realize that the secret sauce has always just been in the people you know. Like you're one person away from knowing, from giving the opportunity to quit your 9 to 5, from giving the opportunity to drop out of college, from giving the opportunity to make 10K a month. Like that is only one person away. And you can, if you can find that person, if you can add a shit ton of value to them, if you can help them in whatever way possible, and if you can just ask like, hey, do you know anyone who's interested? That is literally all you need to do. But people don't see the tangible impact of having a network. And I think what you've said there is very, very valuable. And I hope like people actually like encapsulate that advice and really internalize it.
Right. Like what I would add to that is I don't think people are empathetic enough when they try and sell, right? Because what selling really is a transfer of belief, right? So I believe that I can help somebody because I've done it before and I'm trying to transfer that belief to you. So if they knew that everything that you knew, more times than not, unless you're a scammer, they should buy, right? And it's really just about a fit, not about are you good. And I think people have to have empathy. And like if I were going through DMs nowadays, I would really sit there and think, what do you think this response means? Right? They're telling me this on paper, but what do I think that person said in their head or was thinking in their head when they sent that? And what are they hoping for me to respond? Too many people I see just fiddle away on the DMs like crazy, answering 5, 6 people at once, trying to sell 5 or 6 people at once. And you can't actually tangibly think about what the other person is actually feeling, right? And usually, if you just slow it down a little bit and you kind of just take a second and say, okay, they sent me this message. What does that mean? Like, what do you think they're thinking? Do I think they're actually out? Do I think that they're not seeing the value? Do I think that they think the price is too high, et cetera, et cetera? That's going to help you marginally get better. And it's really just a volume thing, right? Like I said, with the 100 DMs, if you do it for 90 days, you'll easily be at like 10 or 20K a month. That's probably true. And that's not because you're going to make $5,000 month one, $5,000 month two, $5,000 month three. It's because your DM game is going to get exponentially better because you've sent 9,000 DMs in 3 months, right? And you probably, of those 9,000, you probably talked to hundreds of people and tried to sell them. So by the time you get to month three, you're going to be a seasoned vet compared to the people who just try and skip the line. And it's really just about kind of putting that volume in and then taking the time out of your day to be empathetic and think about what that potential prospect is thinking.
Love that, man. I think it's kind of like playing chess, and I think that's why a lot of people love to use the chess analogy, or like tell people to learn chess, because all it is being able to predict the person's move and how you're going to respond dependent on what their move is. And you can like add several layers of complexity to it by imagining they're like some intellectual person, and you can be like, okay, based off what they're saying, are they trying to double bluff me, or are they trying to, what they trying to do? And you can try and just like predict, and the more you can predict with a higher likelihood, the higher it is you're going to be able to get an outcome that favors you. What you're saying now is us very subtle, like behind the curtain, like skills that I genuinely think are very intangible and very, very, very difficult to learn, unless, like you say, you've sent 900 DMs and you've analyzed every single one, why they didn't work, why they worked. So yeah, that's very subtle advice, but I think very, very valuable.
Yeah, I think I try, when I go on these podcasts, I try and kind of give actionable tips and stuff. And to be honest, maybe I'm not the best person in the specific like ghostwriting space, but I have sold a lot of things before. It was like my first 9 to 5 job was sort of in sales, which I really, really enjoyed. And like I said, the bottom line is it comes down to a transfer of belief, right? And to go back on that, that means you must believe you have the ability to do something in your, like, just in your soul, I guess. And that's why I think a lot of people in the dogfight fail, because they don't work for free first. So then they have no idea if they can do it. And when you have no idea if you can do it, you just become unconfident. So then you don't have the belief. And how can you transfer belief to somebody when you don't have it yourself, right? Like, I can't throw you a football if I'm holding a tennis ball. So at the end of the day, like, that's really, really big thing. And I think, look, I mean, I don't know too much about the ghostwriting space right now. Like I said, I'm sort of transitioning away and just kind of keeping and holding. But at the end of the day, I would say, as you get into an uber competitive environment, especially in the middle, right? Like, you need to delight your customers. And if you delight your customers, then you'll have that belief, and then you'll be able to sell, right? Like Warren Buffett always says, I've never seen a business go bankrupt consistently delighting their customers, right? It's pretty unlikely. So when you get into that sort of uber competitive environment, it's really, really important to focus on customer delivery and focus on transferring that belief when it comes to sales. Because the disadvantage of an online business is your competitors can be anybody. You can have competitors in the Philippines, you can have competitors in Nigeria, you can have competitors in South Africa, Australia, Europe, Russia, wherever, right? China, especially. So that's the disadvantage of your non-brick and mortar business. So you got to try and find unique ways to differentiate yourself. Like, for example, kind of to put a bow on this, I know somebody in the ghostwriting space who makes a ton of money. Like, I bet you they do 50K a month, probably. And what this person does is he actually tells the prospect how much money he's going to make from it. So he's like, I'm charging you 6,000 a month. About 2,000 is going to go to this, X amount is going to go to that. I'm probably going to make between $1,800 and $2,300. And it's like, okay, that's kind of different. But it breaks the belief that somebody's paying $6,000 just for somebody to write something, right? Because that's what a lot of people think. They think, oh, I'm paying $6,000. This guy's taking home $6,000. And you and I both know, even though we wish it was true, that is not the case, right? So at the end of the day, that's like a little thing he did where it's just like full transparency. This is how much I make. And like I said, his success rate's probably like 30 to 40% because of it, because it's a genius idea.
I think that's I wanted to double click on that really quickly. Like being transparent, especially in an environment in a meeting where there is a negotiation or where one side might have an unfavorable disadvantage. I think it's really, really, really important to be transparent about what you are thinking going into that negotiation, as well as how that could potentially make them feel, and trying to, I guess, solve for any conflict that might arise. I think that's one really important thing that and this is going back to what everyone keeps saying, like learn sales, learn negotiation. I remember like I used to be so into these like business guru YouTubers, and they'd be like, yeah, learn negotiation, learn marketing, learn sales. But it just sounded so airy fairy until you actually apply it, and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I see now, I see. So it just makes a lot of sense. No, I completely agree with you, man. Is there anything you wanted to say on that? Because I'm curious to hear like some hot takes on Money Twitter, because we were.
Well, if you want money Twitter hot takes, we can certainly get into that. I don't really have anything else to say on the sales thing. I think you brought it yourself, and we provided some good advice to people. But in terms of some money Twitter hot takes, it's not hot takes. I don't hate anybody. You can do what you want, right? Like I'm a big believer in, like real freedoms and rights to, more or less do what you want. But at the end of the day, I just think some people on money Twitter have to decide, are they a creator that runs a business, or are they a business owner that kind of talks about it and is a creator, right? And I think a lot of people on money Twitter specifically are taking really short-term gains that are going to kill them in the long run, especially when it comes to course selling. And by the way, this is from somebody who has sort of sold a course slash community. Maybe that's why I hate it, because I hated it. But basically, like I just think if you sell a course on Twitter, more times than not, there's only a couple people that I can think that sell a course and do it the right way. Actually, sorry, nobody who sells a course. There's some people who sell like masterminds or like community groups, and I think they do it okay. But if you sell just like a flat out course, I like some of those people, but I think they're total sellouts. Like total sellouts, not because they're scamming, and I'm sure the information they give is great, though. Apparently, who was it? Was it Dickie Bush, or was it Nick Cole, who thought like somebody was like stealing?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Nicholas Cole thought Kieran Drew was stealing his
right,
clear not clever
right,
phrase.
exactly. Um, but it's like I just think it's a sellout of potential, I guess. I don't think they're selling out and scamming or anything like that. But I think a lot of people who sell those courses are just completely ruining their potential to be known as a course seller, when in reality, they're probably just better off using their talents and leveraging their talents for more money. I can't think of a more low leverage idea than course sales.
Why?
Okay.
Expand.
Because how are you going to get any type of repeat customer? Like if 1,000 people buy a course from this, actually, there was a guy on Money Twitter. I believe he sold like 600 units of a course. Okay. For I don't know how many dollars. We'll say $500 or something like that. Right. Of the 600 units he sells, 150 people will barely open it or won't look at it for longer than 10 minutes. Another 150 people will not even finish it. So there's half people gone. People who finish it, 20% of them won't even like it. So now you're from 600 to 240. Then from those people, of the people who like it, how many of them are actually going to do something with it? Probably less than half again. So now people who do something with it, how many of those people are actually going to take that, do something with it, and continue that for like 3 to 6 months? Probably, and I'm being generous, half those people. And that is generous. Like I've seen, for example, well, I can't say that actually. I promised the person I would say that. But that is a generous, generous number. So just like that, you went from 600 sales to 60 potential repeat customers. It's like a Ponzi scheme, right? All you're hoping for is that more people come in next time, right? And then you get 1,000 sales, and then also of those 60 that are left who will rebuy, what are the odds that they buy again a third time? I bet you less than 10 of those people have bought it. So if you release a course every 6 months or every 4 months, within 8 to 12 months, you are totally 96% of your client base is like just gone, right? It's a total just money chase hamster. There's only two people right now. Well, there's three, but I can't talk about one. So only two people I see doing it right. And that is Dakota Robertson, and that is JK Molina's like tweets and clients. So he does it with a bunch of people. And Dakota does his growth ghost cohort, which actually is good. But like I said, if this comes to flat out course sales, like you go on a website, you click it, and then you get a PDF that could be 100 pages long. I don't care. Ridiculous, in my opinion. And I think knowing what I know now, buying a course is more or less a waste of time. I would rather just pay double and talk to the person for an hour, and I'll get some real information out of them. If I needed accounting help or something, I would go and I wouldn't buy an accounting course. Something I would go and I'd find an accountant, and I would say, "Hey, I need to do this. It's a bottleneck in my day, in my business, and because of that, I need to learn this. How much does it cost for a couple hours of your time to figure this out?" Like that's what I did, but that's what I'm doing. I would say with Facebook ads. I went because basically I said we're acquiring companies and we might want to run some ads off of it, and I can write it off anyway. So basically, what I did was I went to somebody who runs like $50 million of Facebook ads, and I said I don't really like want to hire you, but I want to know how much would it cost for you to teach me what you know about Facebook ads. It's like some sort of 8-week program. I think it's maybe like 5 or 8 grand or something. And we kind of just worked it out. He didn't have it before. He just kind of made it custom for me based on my goals. And it's like 8 grand. It's like, I'd much rather pay that 8 grand than go and buy a course on Facebook ads for $750. So for me, it's a complete lapse in potential as well, because I can't see how that business model, that course business model will work for 5 years or 10 years, right? It's like I can see how it'll work in 6 months or 8 months or 12 months. And like I said, even though you're going to get diminishing people rebuying, you may still be able to keep track. But eventually, as the marketplace gets more competitive, especially for most people I see selling courses on Twitter growth or copywriting or stuff like that, it just makes no sense. Like there's nothing logical long term that says, yes, you should be selling a $500 digital product and create a new version every 4 months or 6 months. And this is going to be a long-term business model that's going to allow you to consistently make more money than the year before and grow a business. It's like, probably not, right? What it is it's a way for like 3 years, if you have a big audience, to probably grab like $500,000 to $1 million and hope that's enough if you don't spend it like crazy, and then kind of do something else. So I don't know. Maybe is that a hot take? I'm not
Interesting.
sure.
It's an interesting take. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know then, like, why do JK and Dakota do it right as opposed to everyone else?
Well, first of all, they're just better, I guess. I guess you could start there. But I mean, I'll give you a good example. There's somebody on Twitter right now who sells a copywriting course for $400 a year, and they have no copywriting clients, right? JK Molina, his tweets and clients, he's ran a business that made a ton of money from that, like a ghostwriting agency, where he was able to charge 25K up front, which is a lot of money. And not to mention that, he used Twitter, the same thing he's helping you grow on, to sell a business for $1.5 million. That seems like somebody I'd want to learn from. Dakota, same thing. Huge ghostwriting business. And he's used that to like form connections. And I don't know if you're in growth ghosts or not, but at the end of the day, I know that what he's doing for people there is like above and beyond. And once again, like I said, those, like, to get into growth ghosts, I don't know the exact price, but I want to say it's like, I think the second round is like maybe 6 or 7 grand or something, right? JK's tweets and clients, I don't know what it is now, but as of a few months ago, it was 4K a month for 3 months. It's like, that's a real investment, right? And also the guys they bring in, the networking they provide, the intangibles. Like I know in Growth Ghost, right? They brought in like Cold Email Wizard. They brought in JK. They brought in a bunch of other people who are really, really, really great. And then when it came to like JK's crew and tweets and clients, they have him. They have like a dedicated sales guy. They have a dedicated offer. Like it's a whole team, right? And it's customized to you and what your goals are and what you want to do and your bottlenecks, right? And that's why I'm always like, any sort of one-on-one mentorship or one-on-one coaching or customizable coaching option is worth way more, because if I buy a course, I can't go and be like, oh, well, this kind of is what's holding me up right now. If I were running a ghostwriting agency, I can go to Dakota and I can say, hey, blah, blah, like I'm in the mentorship program, yada, yada, yada. This is my bottleneck specifically. Any advice? And he'd fix it. Not himself, but he'd tell you how to fix it. You get it done in 2 weeks. And I just think what they're doing, like I said, they're not selling out. They're using their value. They're giving value and then receiving it in return. I feel like other people just ask for the cash and then in the hopes that like people like it. And like I said, I'm not exactly saintly either. I kind of fell into that trap because it's such a money grab. Like you can make so much money from it. And it's one of those things where it's not money over morals, certainly. Like it's not immoral to sell a course at all. But like I said, long term, the results that JK and Dakota and company are getting for their client, I'll tell you what, I can see how Growth Ghosts, which is Dakota Robertson's cohort, and Tweets and Clients, which is like JK Molina's thing, I can see those being around in 10 years. I can't see, because it's not a course. It's like they got a fucking army behind them that's helping them totally crush it and helping the client totally crush it. Once again, delighting customers. That goes back to my whole point. I don't know anybody who's went bankrupt consistently delighting customers. You sell a course and only 10% of people like it. How is that delightful? Right? If only 10% of people get actual value from it, that's not delighting your customers. That's just selling fairy dust.
Interesting. So I was actually in Dakota's Growth Ghost, so I can confirm that it was good. I've
Yeah, I wasn't
actually,
sure. I knew you were. I just
yeah,
didn't get up because I wasn't sure how it kind
that's
of went.
cool, man. That's cool. So I've actually, yeah, I was probably one of the people who hit 10K a month through his course.
Exactly.
Exactly from what he learned, like everything pretty much from Dakota. Like he's a genuinely good guy, and you can see that he's one of those people. I saw he had an email newsletter one time where he was talking about how he was a massive people pleaser, but he uses that to his advantage because he tries to over deliver and please every single person that he has. So I was just like, mate, that's such a good spin on it. But yeah, no, I kind of, yeah, I do kind of agree with the course stuff, but I guess a good take on it or good perspective would be like,
It's
is it gone?
it's also, it's not just about the course, it's about what they've actually done.
Mm,
Take a guy like Charles Miller, right? Charles sells a course, and that is that's fine because I know like Charles and I know he actually ghostwrites and copyrights. So he has his business. He's like, I'll also make a course that helps people out. Right. That is, I still wouldn't sell the course, but it's like I can see that, right? Because he's doing exactly what he's doing today and he's just telling people how to do it. Right. Same thing with like Dakota. Right? It's like Dakota still doing writing stuff on the side while he's telling people. Right. There's a group of people out there, and I want to be very clear, they are lovely people. They are really nice, and I've talked to them before. There's a group of people out there who got on Twitter like 3 months ago and grew to like 10,000 followers, probably because they ran ads on Twitter, and ads on Twitter were broken back then. And they literally, just from that, and then I said, oh, well, we're going to sell a course for $2,000. It's like, but what have you done with it? Right? It's like, all those followers, and I'm not saying they are, but they could all be ridiculous followers. You can get followers for like 3 cents on the dollar, like 3 cents right now per follow. So it's like They haven't done anything with it. Okay. The best guys who do it right are guys like um, Cardinal Mason and I always screw this guy's last name. Chase Diamond, like
Chase Diamond,
yeah,
Chase Diamond.
Diamond, yeah, Chase Diamond, who it's like Chase runs a real copywriting agency that makes a gross sum of money every year. Like Ash, I believe isn't it 8 figures? Like
I
it's
think
something,
it's yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
something crazy. It's like, okay, so he sells a course. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. It's like I think he has the right in quotation marks to sell a course. But it's like, does Jimmy, who came on Twitter in March and I'm sure worked hard and grew a following, is he do I think that's the best use of his long-term time and money to sell a course? Of course not. Right. So, like I said, it's not really a sellout for the people who buy it. It's almost like I thought you could do so much better to some of the people who sell it, right? Because it's just such a low leverage opportunity. You're like
Just
my therapist,
one
dude.
final
Should charge you, or you should charge me.
one final point on that. Would you argue that it's the creator's problem that the student does not complete it, or do you think it's on the student who doesn't complete? Because you can buy a bad product and you don't use it, but is it a bad product, right? Just
No,
because you don't use it.
you're absolutely correct. For example, like I said, with my community, it's like we had a bunch of people sign up, whatever. Everybody who showed up to our meetings, like, look, obviously you're not gonna make every single meeting because we had meetings like 3 times a week, right? But everybody who showed up to like 70% of the meetings or more, even 50% of the meetings or more, 10x their investment, made thousands, right? Not even close. Everybody who didn't, I don't want to hear you complaining. Like when somebody says, man, I say, how many meetings do you show up to? Oh, let's look at the records. Zero, right? Take the CODIS cohort, for example. You probably know this. I don't know how like invested you were in it or like how many meetings you went to, but I'm pretty sure that like halfway through the cohort, like barely like half the people showed up. It's like that's a $5,000 course. And it's like people gave up after 6 weeks. That's insanity, right? Which also says like that's your competition. Like, are you kidding me right now? But anyway, you're absolutely right. And that it can be a bad product, it can be a bad consumer. There's such thing as a bad consumer as well in the digital eco space. But what I would say is, like I said, I think I just can't logically justify how that is a good long term play. I can't do it. I can't think of a single way. And this is the thing, I'm a big believer in the fact that when I have an opinion on something, I should be able to state the opposite argument better than those who have the opposite opinion. And therefore, that's why I have that certain opinion. And I've tried to, but I just can't think of any sort of reason why somebody would say long term, it's really good for me to sell a course to the masses every 4 months. And just basically, because here's a big thing, you know, this in business, because ghostwriting's higher ticket, where it's like you can make $20,000 a month, and $20,000 could come in the first, second, and third day of the month. And then, even though you're making $20,000 a month, you have zero cash flow for the other 25 days of the business. Right? Like that's a huge thing when people get their first 2 or 3 ghostwriting clients. They get the $4,000 or the $5,000 total between the two clients, whatever, and they're like, "I'm making $5,000 a month." It's like, yeah, that means that $5,000 needs to last you another month until you get another one, assuming you have a multi-month contract. So that's like thing for course sales. Like, okay, great, I can sell a course. Great, I made $150,000 in like a week, right? Yeah, that's great, but it's got to last you 6 months. And it's like I would rather just buy a business or invest in a business that's going to pay me that monthly. And like that's kind of the leverage shift that I had. And I think a lot of people come to that leverage shift, right? Like I can't speak too much in terms of specific people and specific ventures, but it's like everybody I know who's like big in the Twitter space, big in the ghostwriting space, like especially like that, like online creator, like writing, copywriting stuff. They're all working behind the scenes to transition into something kind of not exactly like me, because what I'm doing is like completely like it's a little bit out to left field, but they're all working on like, okay, how can I leverage this get an equity position in this business. Like I know somebody and who's big in the Twitter space who's going around and they're leveraging their ability to copyright for equity stakes in startups, right? So it's like, I'm going to help take your marketing to the next level. Almost just got crushed by my umbrella, but I can help take your marketing to the next level. But I want, 5% of the company. And they're raising funding at like, for example, I'll give you an example. For me personally, I don't know if I'll take this opportunity. I don't know. So I can't say it explicitly, but there was a company who raised like $2.5 million at like maybe, I don't know, some sort of valuation of 3 or 4 million. And they came to me a few months ago and they said, hey, we'll give you some equity to do our marketing for our founders because we believe in the creator economy. Right. And it's like, boom, that's higher leverage. And that's what a lot of people behind the scenes are doing. So, like I said, I just don't think maybe those people are doing those things behind the scenes as well. But I think a lot of people, a lot of course sellers are going to get caught with their hand in their pants because there's no long-term viability. Like there's no moat to that, right? There's no leverage. It's literally your time and the hope that people will buy based on, think about what Twitter is, right? You text something and you send it out to the world. So you're putting your livelihood on the line in hopes to make more and more money every single year based on the fact that a couple things that you tweet out per day are going to connect with some people, and that because of that they're going to spend $500,000 on a course. It's just illogical in the long term.
That's interesting. Let's dive deeper into that then. So agency model, like I'm completely aware it's not a super high leverage play unless you start having employees and you start like trying to marginalize them, not marginalize, but I guess like take margin from them. It's a good start. It's kind of like level 1 of the game. Now, how do you go from level 1 to level 2, which is like the more leverage players, like you're saying, equity share, what you're doing, business flipping, like all that kind of stuff, and maybe other guys with like big cohorts or whatever it is they're doing. Like, how do you go from the level 1 to the level 2?
Firstly, you have to be good enough, right? Like the big issue a lot of people have is they move too early, I guess. And this is actually very contrarian to what I usually say because I'm a big believer in like, let's go. If you can do it in 6 months, you can do it in 4, right? But you have to have the skills and value set up. And like what I would recommend for people who want to get into the agency space is I would only take, if I were to do the agency space all over again, I would take like 6 or 7, 8 clients maybe, depending on like what I was charging. And I would just focus on absolute value for those 8 clients. And yeah, of course, I wouldn't go from 10K to 20K to 50K within 3 months, but I'd make really good money, better money than most people by far. And I would probably be able to gain those connections and leverage those connections. And I would try and like with you and with me and with other people that we know, it's just kind of like that one client that kind of gets you in the door. And then from there, you have all the leverage in the world, right? And like, for example, I'm leveraging cash, right? You, for your agency right now, you're leveraging connections, right? If you buy a business, you're leveraging labor and machinery, right? So there is no real playbook that I can give somebody to go out and say, oh yeah, the moment you hit this, do this, this, this. These are like the actionable steps. But what I would say is it really just comes down to delivery, right? Because for example, I've had clients who I've talked about in terms of like getting their funding for like the private equity play. And some of them are like, I'm good, but I know you're a killer. Here's a guy I know who will, right? So it really just comes down to being able to gain that trust with those wealthier individuals. The best way to gain trust with wealthy individuals is just to deliver. Like it's not really any sort of magic. It's not it's not an income or where you're from. It's just, do you deliver? You can have one client deliver for them and they can open up a ton of opportunities for you, right? So what I would say if I were doing the agency space again, I would say, like I said, find like 6 guys who you want like their network or you want like kind of what they have. Don't ask for their network, just deliver it. And then figure out where you want to go when it comes to leverage and then do that. Or use that, I guess, leverage to increase your income.
Dude, I can really resonate with that. Like that's exactly the kind of like mindset I've have and the kind of understanding that I've come to learn. Like the only way to network quote unquote with these big guys, these 7, 8, 9 figure entrepreneurs is to help them, like provide
Mm,
value. I know value
yeah.
is kind of thrown around a lot, but it's basically just helping them do something that they might not have time to do or they just can't be asked to do, but it's still like kind of valuable to them. And then that's your in. Like I was talking to my housemate the other day about how
It's
like
about credibility.
yeah, literally credibility, and it kind of tests your character as well to show, because if you can do a good job and it shows that you're trying hard for someone, why can't you try hard for them somewhere else and doing some other thing, maybe a high leverage play? You're building trust over time. And one thing I was talking to my housemate about, because he was saying, because he works in finance, he was saying how like, oh, I haven't done networking in a while, yada yada yada. And I was like, yo, the reason why it's very hard to network in the corporate sense is because everyone knows that the only reason why you're talking to these guys is to try and get a promotion. And so
Yeah.
everything you're saying comes from a place of need and want, as opposed to a how can I help you? And so in business, it's so much more different because we can do something like ghostwriting, which it's a skill that takes time to learn. It's easy to enter, but takes time to master. But once you master it, you can then demonstrate the credibility and show people who are worth way more, who see value in this opportunity. You can show them what you've got. You can show them that you've practiced, you've done your sort of 20 hours, 1,000 hours, whatever it is. And then you can be like, another key skill, right? Is like you said, identifying opportunities. And you wouldn't be able to see past ghostwriting if you don't have a skill of being able to see arbitrage opportunities, business opportunities, partnership opportunities. And I genuinely think, like, I think I'm similar to you in that it's a certain type of person who um, tries to make win-win situations for everyone, and that's how we both win. It's like if I can make him 10x more money than I make, but I still make a ton of money, like everyone's winning. And so it's like thinking
Right.
in that aspect, but that comes with, I think that comes with time and experience. It doesn't come with, you don't need like 10 years, but I think like even like a year in agency space or a year just in doing something, selling to someone, working with these big guys, I think that's really, really valuable. And to me, that's how you find the higher leverage. And I guess like my question to you is like, what do you define as a leverage play? Because I know you said it's like there's no step-by-step guide on like how to define leverage. Like, what is your kind of process for finding something that's more leveraged than the agency space, for example? And why, I guess for the audience, like why is the agency space not high leverage?
Sure. So quickly, I kind of jump on what you said. Once again, it's about empathy and putting yourself in that higher net worth individual's shoes, where it's like, I can say now, and I'm certainly not worth like 9 figures or anything like that. So don't people shouldn't get ahead of themselves. But it's like I have a lot of great connections. I have connections to people worth 250, 500 million, 80 million, and I can just call them up and have a conversation with them any day of the week when I wanted to. And it's like, as somebody who's kind of growing my wealth, not, like anywhere near them, but just in general, how do you think they would feel if they recommended you and gave you credibility to their network and you screwed them over or you didn't deliver? But you know how bad that would be to them? It's like one of the reasons why, and Alex Ramosi talks about this, and I'm going to do the same thing with the companies that I buy at my private equity group, is I'm not going to go outwardly and say, I own Jimmy's, this company here, that is, because I don't know those people. And something those people do can greatly affect me. Right? Alex Welty talks about all the time. It's like we're part of a bunch of different companies that have hundreds of employees. And what if some guy I've never met before accidentally DMs some underage girl or does some stupid ass thing? That's my brand that's being affected because I associated with that, because I gave that credibility because I invested in it. Right. And it's like no rich guy wants to be the person who says that somebody can handle something and doesn't. Right. Like I was looking for a lawyer for just some basic legal work. And I got a reference from one of my accountants, and she said, "Yeah, email this guy, right?" Emailed him twice, called him twice, didn't answer anything. I texted back. I said, "That's weird. Is he on vacation?" I didn't answer. Like I didn't get an answer. He's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm never gonna refer him again." Right? So it's like that's the level you have to play at. But back to kind of the leverage play. There are a few things you can leverage. You can leverage time. You can leverage money. You can leverage labor. You can leverage technology. Right? Those are like the four main levers that you can pull on. And what I would say is when it comes to increasing your earning potential, there are two main factors. And this doesn't mean you're going to make more money. I just said your earning potential. Keyword on potential there. But there's the skill of the entrepreneur and there's the level of leverage that they have, right? So the agency space is good because it can increase your skill and your intangibles as an entrepreneur, right? Like let's say you start and you're like a two, and let's say then you learn sales, you learn marketing, business decorum, you learn to see opportunities a little bit, and then you grow your network, right? Okay, now maybe you're a two, now you're like a seven or a six or something, right? But I always say that like a 10 out of 10 entrepreneur in a 2 out of 10 leverage opportunity is going to make way less money than somebody who's awful but has like who's a 3 out of 10 entrepreneur but has a 9 out of 10 leverage opportunity, right? Like if you have a 10 out of 10 leverage opportunity, I can take the monkey from the local zoo, put them in charge of that company, and they'll make me $1 million a year. The potential of that company could be 10 million because the monkey doesn't know what he's doing, but the potential is way higher than if it was reversed, right? So the reason the agency space isn't leverage is just because you're not leveraging capital. There's no debt leverage, like nothing really you're doing. The most leverage you can kind of have is like take growth ghosts or like tweets and clients, right? It's like that's kind of leverage, but not really because there's no throughput, right? Like there's nothing really pushing you to continue other than your own will and conscience. Okay, then you can leverage technology. That can be like machinery, that can be AI, that can be any sort of like anything that makes your business more efficient, basically. Then you can leverage labor, right? Like that's a huge thing, right? Like being able to have other people who go to work for 8 hours a day at whatever wage, yet that wage that you pay them makes you X amount of dollars more, right? It's like if you have 10 employees at some brick and mortar business and you pay them, let's be very generous. You pay them $20 an hour or $25 an hour, whatever. I don't know what a store employee makes depending on where you live, but pay them $25 an hour, but they leverage you $40 an hour of input or of output through your business, basically, and the profits you receive, just like that, you're leveraging them. So if you have 10 employees, they each get you an extra $15 from what you pay them. Every hour they work, those 10 employees are getting you another additional $150, right? So basically, the agency, if you just follow that, you can clearly tell that the agency space is not a high leverage opportunity, right? Because employment is typically low in terms of the fact that most people just run it themselves. If you do get to a level where you run it at a high scale, it can be a little bit difficult, and also the churn is a lot higher than other places, right? Because it's very, very difficult in a digital world to keep churn low. I would say that can kind of be very difficult. And then obviously, like there's very, very little technology input. Like maybe you can have some CRM or something, but nothing like, for example, like a company we're looking at, right, has this like new high press machine. I can't get into it too much, but this new high press machine is like that doubles the efficiency. We can go from generating like $300,000 a month to 450 just by inputting that machine, right? So it's like that machine is literally making me another 100 or 1.5 or 1.8 million a year in revenue just entering it, right? So like that's real leverage, right? Using Jasper AI or something like that. It's not it's leverage, but it's not to that scale, right? So what you've kind of got to do is you got to find ways to kind of utilize that leverage and use that entrepreneurial skill set to increase that leverage. Because, like I said, I view network on the entrepreneur side, not on the leverage side. Because the entrepreneur can have that network and not leverage it like an idiot, right? So you kind of have to find those like unique ways. Theme of this podcast basically identifying opportunities to use that leverage. And it can start with something really small, and then it can grow to something. Like the first leverage opportunity I used was helping Talon out with something. And then we kind of started like a little thing. And like I said, that turned out to be a big mistake in terms of like my happiness, but still leveraged it, right? And I still made a little bit of money from it. Now, leveraging this, that's obviously going to be worth a lot more. But yeah, I would say it's like labor, tech, and capital are like, those are kind of like the main three things that you can leverage, I guess.
Dude, the network one is so funny. So I've actually got a really funny example. One of my friends, he works at an investment bank, and there's a girl he works with who doesn't really do much, and she's always on her phone. Now she's the daughter of a very, very, very wealthy man. And so
future CEO.
Literally. And so she had connected a potential customer or potential firm to the bank for business.
Of course.
One connection has now netted a boatload of money for that investment bank.
And guess who's going to get promoted?
Exactly, right. Exactly,
right. That's another great point, actually, because I don't know how many people listen to your pod or like where they're kind of from or what they're trying to do. But if you want to be an employee, which is totally cool, right? Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with being an employee. I think it's not the path I would go down. I think I'd go insane. But I know lots of people who are like, I just want to be an employee, and I know I'm very smart, and I know I'm capable, and that's what I want to do, which is cool. What I would say is, and you brought the exact point, like when I talk with my employees, I don't want to ask them, or I don't want a synopsis of, oh, I spent 3 hours doing this, or 2 hours doing that, or 6 hours doing this. I want to know, what are the results that took the business forward, right? Like, what'd you do Monday? I did 2 hours, screwing around here. Then I did 4 hours, doing this. No. The first 2 hours of my day, I helped advance this conversation so that we can get a better knowledge of X, Y, and Z. Then I went and talked to the CEO of this company. They said that X company is for sale. We might be interested in that. So I made that contact, right? That's the way. Like, if you want to be paid more, if you want more people to want you, if you want to be promoted more, it's got to be, how am I pushing the business forward, not just like timing. And that person's a great example, right? They leveraged something they had, this like grew up rich thing. It's really a mix for me, because it's like, of course, an advantage, but through no fault of their own, that person was born, and she just took advantage of an opportunity, right? And yeah, like I said, she deserves the promotion because she helped the business the most, assuming, there weren't any other major transactions or anything like that.
And I think even if you have that, I think it's unfair advantages. So one idea I've really been trying to dive deep in is like, how do you find that unfair advantage that can literally come from anything, whether it's like looks, money, status, your natural skill set, how much you can bench, anything, right? Anything is a natural advantage because you're just naturally better than everyone else.
Good
obviously
golfing.
without even, as you remove the ego and like the arrogance aside, it's like you're just naturally better. And so you're naturally better, you're going to be naturally good at it, and you're going to be naturally enjoy it more. And so like it's a combination of things. And it's like, okay, you mentioned that you feel like you're naturally better at identifying opportunities. Are there any other sort of skill sets which you feel that naturally come to you easier? And like another thing is like, how do you find this kind of stuff? Because I genuinely believe that every single person in the world has some sort of natural unfair advantage that they're just not leveraging, whether that's looks, whatever, money, whatever. And it's just like, how do you find that, and how do you like double down and just absolutely take advantage and live it to the fullest potential?
Yeah, that's the big question for just success as a whole, right? then success is not necessarily monetary. It's really more defined as achieving one's goals or I don't really believe in dreams per se. I prefer goals. But to answer your question, I would look backwards, not forwards. And I would think, where are places that I've been happiest or felt good or felt that I'm the most ahead personally, in terms of like my personal development, as well as ahead of other people. And then kind of reverse it and think, was there anything I leveraged there that I might be better than people at? Right? It's um, like for example, let's say like one of your like goals or whatever is to like have a hot girlfriend, or I don't know, something to do with a girl, right? It's like, oh, well, if you went to the club, then maybe like you went to the club 2 times, and the first 2 times I don't go to the club, so I'm gonna sound like an idiot. But the first 2 times you like didn't get like any bottle service. You weren't like in one of those like higher up like places that cost money to sit or do whatever, right? Like so your status was lower, right? And then it's like, oh, the third time you realize that your friend John was there, and you just went up and talked to him. He's like, yeah, come over, man, because you guys were good buddies in high school, right? And then suddenly, oh, a bunch of girls start approaching you because you're there hanging out with John. So it's like, what's the leverage opportunity? It's like the leverage is that status, is that table, and it's John, right? So you should be, if that, like, I would not personally recommend having your life be to pick up a girl at a club. But if that is your life goal, I do everything possible to leverage John. And I'd find out John's an awful name to use it for this example, but um, I would. So, does John like to golf? Does he like to play badminton? Whatever, right? And that's kind of how you kind of increase that leverage. But you got to start with, where have I achieved my goals, and then how have I done that, right? And this answer is a very difficult one because it makes the assumption that everybody's goals. The only way I could answer it properly is by assuming that everybody's goals are the same as mine, right? And that is not true, and it shouldn't be true. I guess the best way that there are 2 ways actually that you can create it. You either have it naturally, like you said, and you can leverage it, or you can create that leverage just through work, right? And just like plowing through. So my best advice would be, see where you've been at the top in your life and leverage it. Like, do you always finish top 2% of your grade in math or whatever, right? So that means you're probably pretty good at math. So how can you get in the top 1%, which is even better? Maybe you're really good at other things. Maybe you're very linguistic. But I think it's really something that comes to you. I can't go out and tell you a specific thing. I think it's more just, you know what I can say? You got to be conscious in your mind. Not enough people are conscious in their mind when they're having conversations, when they're having, um, various interactions with people, or when they're doing something, right? Like on this call, right? I'm here talking, right? I'm looking at how your head's moving. When you're talking and you're asking me a question, I'm solely focused on, what is that question? How do I answer it? What is the thesis? What is my core points? It's like, maybe it's just me, but I'm consciously thinking all those points through as you're talking. That puts me in the moment. That puts me present. That makes me more presentable. That makes me better, right? And so I would say you got to be conscious in your mind about what you're doing. And actually, that's by far the best piece of advice. Be conscious in your mind of what you're doing, and actually think, like, next time you go for a drive, right? If you get in a car crash, not my fault, but next time you drive, literally think, I'm stepping my right foot on the pedal. Now I move it. Oh, you drive on the other side in England, so I don't know how it works, but in Canada, it's like the gas is on the right and the brakes on the left. So it's like I'm putting my right foot on the right pedal. Then I'm putting it to the left to brake. I'm looking both ways at the stop sign. Safe, I'm going to proceed. Just getting into the habit of thinking those things through in your head, you're going to have way more things, I guess, come to you, because it's going to reduce your brain fog and just you're kind of floating through life. That was a long answer.
No, makes complete sense, man. And I guess the key takeaway from that is give yourself space to think. I think
Mhm.
it's very difficult in this kind of like tech-enabled society where everyone's got a distraction. And I know these topics have been said and regurgitated a million times, but it's always about when you have space to think, you can then understand, and then you can then decipher whether or not this is something that you're good at, or it's something that you're bad at, or it's something that you just don't like. And like, what's the point of continuing? And that's why people just go through life and they have like midlife crises, and they like really just get depressed, and like they don't understand what's going on, they like don't have a purpose or whatnot. I think it's just because, like you say, there's no consciousness in their choices. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, which is genuinely sad to see. Like, there are a lot of people that like you interact with every day, you kind of see like maybe friends from high school, whatever it is, and it's just seeing them just go through the motions. Because I feel like anyone on this sort of entrepreneurial journey is kind of like removed and can kind of see like consciously what's going on. And so
Yeah.
all this other stuff where people are going into like the super degeneracy or like just any of these bad habits, whatever it is, it's just sad to
Ask
see
your
because you can see
friends,
that. Yeah,
ask
exactly.
your friends, ask your family. Hey, don't say, hey, what do you think I'm better at than everybody else? But say, hey, do you see anything in that I think that you think I might do better than most people? Right. And if you start to see some congruentness, could be a bunch of things, right? It could be like, for example, let's say you're really good at basketball or you're really good at any sport, right? There are rich people out there who love playing every sport. They love it, right? Like, or love playing a certain sport, meaning that no matter what sport you're really good at, there's going to be somebody there who likes it, right? So it's like, oh, some guy that I want to network with likes basketball. Hey, I have courtside seats to a team, to the local team, right? Or I have a box so we can go watch, this team play. That's like the money side of networking. And then there's also like, hey, do you want to go shoot hoops? Or like if they go to some sort of country club or like rec center or whatever, like a lot of, I don't know how it is in the UK, but Canada, at least a lot of really rich people, they just go to like normal places. There's not many posh places around. It's like, hey, yeah, we'll go to this like local community center where they like have like hoop sessions or whatever. You can just kind of go and just scrimmage at night. And it's like, okay, let's go there. Right. And then you can kind of meet them there and kind of use that. But what I would say is anybody can turn themselves from a like 2 to a 7 just by asking themselves, not like in looks, but in entrepreneur ability, just by asking themselves what is required to get there. And I was talking with my friend about this last night, actually. And I said, a lot of people can be really, really successful, but they don't go anywhere because they can't look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm not good enough in these areas. And this is what's required to get to where I want. And it's like, you don't have to do your best, but you have to do what's required. And that is a two-way street, right? Sometimes what's required is way better than your current best, and you have to push your limits like crazy. Other times, what's required is not that much, right? So at the end of the day, I think you just got to ask yourself, like, what's required to be here? Like, let's say you're, take this for example, right? This right here, this podcast is a presentation of myself to others, right? And some people may know me, some people may not. But look at the shirt I'm wearing, right? I did a little bit to my hair. I didn't realize I'd put on headphones after, so that was a little bit counterproductive. But it's like I look better than when I woke up this morning or how I looked 10 minutes before this thing started because of presentation of myself. Do I love doing it? No, I don't enjoy like getting dressed up and everything, but it's what's required to present myself properly, right? So you got to go and think what's required to actually be successful and take myself to the next level. And once you can find that answer, and people know it, like people are just not honest about it, right? It's like the people who've been telling me they spent 3 years trying to lose weight. Like, are you in a wheelchair? No. Well, then go for a walk every day. Like, move more, right? And eat a salad. Like, it's not some crazy thing. It's like they know what's required, but they're not doing it, right? They're still picking up the piece of cake. When their friend says, hey, do you want to go and get ice cream? They say yes. And I say, no, actually, you can go, but I'm not going to have anything, right? So it's, stuff like that. It's just what's required to kind of to be successful.
There's definitely what Alex Hormozy says quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
So couple more questions, just because I know
Of course.
you're about to go.
I
First
got
one's
about
like
10 minutes.
first one's like your life, right, as a 19/20-year-old,
Yeah.
with the kind of ventures that you're experiencing and you're trying to pursue. Like, I can't imagine it's like the life of a normal kind of teenager, early 20s kind of guy. So like, how has this changed your kind of like life, day-to-day life, like what you do, people you hang out with, where you go? Like, how is this changing it? What's your approach to it, to a normal life, quote unquote?
Yeah. I'd say it's a lot more boring than a normal life to outsiders, right? Like if people ask just on a blank sheet what I did every day, I'd say I do the exact same thing more or less every day. I get up, I get coffee, I go, and I usually spend between like 8 in the morning and depending on when I wake up. I don't set an alarm, I just kind of wake up at a time. But let's just say between like 8 in the morning and like 12 o'clock, and I just work for 4 hours, right? Now, what is the kind of comma there is, and I love doing what I'm doing. So it's really exciting. And I'm talking to rich people, I'm talking to brokers, I'm getting financing, I'm doing numbers, looking at like loan prices and interest and negotiating stuff like that. Looking at businesses, did we hit our key performance indicators? Or this business or this, right? Just like I just get up, I work, then usually I'll go work out midday, kind of like a break from like we'll say 12 to 1. Then I'll work again from like 1 to 3:30. I'll take like another break and kind of like screw around, and then I'll work maybe a little bit later at night. Every second night, maybe I'll do a little session from like maybe 6 to 7:30 or 6 to 8. And those other nights I'll go, and especially when it's summer, I like going out with my friends because where I live, it gets really cold. Like I don't know if you guys are Celsius or Fahrenheit, but it gets like minus 40 degrees Celsius where I live in some points of the winter. Yeah, exactly. So
Holy shit.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's like you're not going outside for like there's a span of about 4 weeks where you're just not going outside because you're just gonna freeze. Like, yeah. So anyway, so that's what I do. And if you look at that in face value, it sounds a lot worse than, oh, I go to the club every Friday and I do that. And actually, to be honest, Charlie Munger. I don't know if it's Charlie Munger or not. It might have been Hermosi actually, but he said something really great. He said, "Successful people don't have something that unsuccessful people don't. Unsuccessful people have things in their lives that successful people don't." Right? Like rich is boring, really, really, really boring. Right? If I just laid my life out like that, they would think you live such a boring life. The difference is I love what I do. I don't get up every day and think, oh my God, I got to go to work. I jump out of bed every day and say, I get to go to work because it's exciting for me. And then also, when you look at the bank account at the end of the month, it feels pretty good too, to be really honest. So um, I really honestly have not changed. You could argue that's something I've actually tried to work on. If we're getting into like personal development, in the winter, I'm really big on like really grinding. And like I said, it's just freezing cold here in the winter. And there's nothing really to do. So I in the summer, like I'm really trying to go out and do like kind of new things, different things, and socialize more. Because in the winter, I'm just in like a dormant state basically, where I'm just like lasered in. Um, but I wouldn't say my life has changed in terms of I've added more things. I'd say actually I've reduced things, and that has made me way more successful, like way more successful, right? So I would not like, I am in no way, I come from a pretty small city, but I am in no way like ultra popular or a bunch of people want to like spend a ton of time with me. I don't outwardly, like, not a lot of people my age are on Twitter, like money Twitter more specifically. They're more on like meme Twitter. And I don't like, I'm gonna get to more like educational posting on Instagram, but I don't do that right now. So not a ton of people are like, I need to like be with this guy, but I really prefer it that way, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm the same, bro. Like, I've definitely felt that cutting a lot of stuff down in my life has just
Yeah.
made it so much better. It just feels better, like so much more peace of mind. It's just like you don't have multiple things, and you can
Yeah.
kind of just go all in on the business. And like, dude, I think similar to you, just finding the people who have the same mindset, have the similar goals, are kind of like moving the same way and actually consistent in what they're doing. It's very hard to find, especially around our age. And I think like in money Twitter, like with like good opinions or bad opinions, any opinion, right, is still the people on there are all absolute killers in whatever shape
Yeah.
or form, right? They're all hustling, they're all trying to make something of themselves. And that's what I really respect. Like, whether or not the opinions are good or bad, like everyone is just trying to actually just make it. And that's what I respect. And the people who stay longest end up doing something. You know what I mean? And it's just like that's the kind of like tribe you really want to build. Um, Anything you want to say just on the end of that? Because I've got one more question just to wrap it all up.
What I would say is, I think I was talking to this guy who's really big on money Twitter as well, actually, really, really big. He's kind of our age. I don't know how old you are, but he's like 23 or something. And I was talking to him about like success. And he's like, yeah, like X, Y, and Z, and people want me, people this. But it's like, it's tiring. Like, I would really say what I've been really fortunate to have is like a great core friend group who have been my friends for a long time, decades, even though I haven't lived for 2 decades technically. um,
Man's capping, bro.
basically, and they are just wonderful, wonderful people. And I don't know, maybe it's because I come from a smaller city, but where I come from, I've been very fortunate because if you're rich and you're an asshole in my city, you're just an asshole. Well, in like London or New York or like Miami, if you're rich and you're an asshole, you're just seen as rich, right? And I think that has really like that worldview has really harnessed me. And like I don't really mind talking about money. I think money's too taboo in terms of like how much money do you make, what's this and that. I don't say it as a brag. I just say it's more like a education so people can tell real numbers. Um, but at the end of the day, um, it's very you got to find those people around you. Because without that, you're gonna really struggle. Like I said with this guy, right? He was like all over the place, and it's like that's because there's no moat around him. It's like we always talk about businesses, right? They got to be defensible. They got to have a moat around them. They got to be competitive. Like my friends and my family and the people around me are a competitive advantage for me against other people, especially when I've had what's considered large material success to some, but not the material success I desire, right? So it's like those people are the moat that's going to continue to propel me forward. But yeah, we got time for another question. Go ahead.
Awesome, man. Last one then. So what challenge would you give to the audience, to anyone listening, maybe want to start a business, maybe they're already starting one? Like what kind of challenge would you think would have a ridiculous ROI on their time?
I would challenge yourself. It depends what you, if you are first starting a business, I would really, really encourage people. I don't know if it's a challenge, but I'd really encourage people to sit and realize. And I buy a calendar. This is my challenge to people. I'd go out and I'd buy a calendar, 4 years worth of calendars, because there's some calendars that are like decade long ones, right? So what is it? What day is it today? The
12th.
12th of July, right? It's the 12th of July, 2023. I would buy a calendar every single year. So 2023, 2024, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I buy up until 2030. I don't care if you buy one that has 10 years in it. If you buy 7 that have 1 year in it, find those calendars. That's not the challenge part. That should be fairly simple. Or print them out. You can always find those kind of things, right? And I challenge you to circle July 12th, 2028. Circle that and say, that's when I'm done my journey. Because if you're starting now, it's going to take you at least 3 years to find any material success whatsoever. You're going to fail 4 times. We talk about all the great things I've done in the past year. I started being an entrepreneur when I was 16 years old, 4 failures, found a great, quote, kind of great success with ghostwriting. And now I'm presenting something that I'm very, very confident is going to make me a ton of money. Right. But like I said, I turned 20 in a few weeks. I started when I was 16. I didn't see any material results until 19, basically, right? So I really challenge you to go and physically circle that date and write, this is when I'm judged. right? I'm not judged on what I do in a month. I'm not judged on what I do in 3 months or a year or even 2 years, right? I'm judged on where am I in that position in 5 years' time, right? Because I don't know if I talked about you or talked with you about this, but it's like my mindset really shifted from like when I look through my goals for 2023, it was like I think it was like maybe $500,000, something like that, right? And it was like make $500,000, do this, do that, blah blah, and they're all monetary. But what I realized in reflection was all short term within my life. It's like all of them are this year's goals. All of them are like, what can I do in 4 months, right? In reality, it's like I changed my goals and I said, it's not about making $500,000, in 2023. It's how can I set myself up to make like $10 million in like 2030, basically, right? So I would really, and that's the mindset I've changed. And because of that, I have lowered my income maybe by 40 or 50% or so. But that's really like the change that I've really had in the mindset shift. So I would go out and I would circle that date and basically just have that understanding that you're going to be judged on what you do or where you are that day, not where you are in a week, not where you are when you fail in like a few months and then you like give up for a little bit and then you come back to the table, right? Where are you going to be 5 years today?
Awesome, man. That's sick, man. Great way to end the episode.
Thanks, man.
Jack Bennett, ladies and gentlemen. Take care,
Thanks for
man.
having me.